Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning to DC and Victor. Are either of you in KubeCon EU at the moment by chance?
Wish. No.
Yeah, same. I was reminded that's happening this week, so we might have low participation because of that. I know Fatih won't be joining us for that reason. He says they're having lots of good conversations over there, so I'm really excited to hear about what he has to share when he gets back. Probably at our next meeting, hopefully, if not before. So anyway, since I'm not sure who else will be joining, considering this week is pretty busy for folks, I just wanted to keep it open to get an open discussion on what we want our goals to be for the remainder of this year. I know one of the biggest, well, not the biggest, but a serious thing we need to get done is get a sponsorship of the SIG. So normally a TOC member of the CD Foundation would sponsor a special interest group in order to report back to the TOC quarterly on our activities, things like that. We do not have a sponsor and have not had one for a while because we didn't really have a process in place for when the TOC members change and move in and move out. We never really fixed that when our last sponsor left the TOC. I'm on the TOC, totally willing to sponsor, but that feels a little weird considering I'm one of the chairs of this SIG as it is. So I'm reaching out personally to the other TOC members to see if I can convince one of the others to jump in and help sponsor this SIG for us. They might, I don't know if they would start joining or if they could just at least listen to the recording so they can at least report back to the group. But I can certainly help with that as long as I'm a member of the TOC as well. So that's our first item on the agenda. I just wanted to make you all aware, and for anyone watching this in the future, make you aware that we're working on that and getting that done. Let's see, I'm just going to share what I have right now. I just have a few things. And I will also put the link to the agenda in the chat here for you online. We talked about the sponsorship of the SIG. We do need to define the agenda for upcoming meetings. Now, something that never happened was this year when we moved over. We need to archive everything, from the previous year, get it moved in, clean up our repo a little bit, clean up our notes a little bit, clean up all of the previous speakers. We have a list out there of all the speakers that we've had talk along with their slides and the recording link and things like that. I would like to make sure that's clean and crisp for our new members as they arrive this year. We'll be working on getting more of our community involved. And then if you all have any speakers or any projects that sound interesting that you know of, that we would like to have present, we definitely love to do that during these meetings. We've had some really interesting ones in the past. One I was reviewing recently was we had someone from Dagger come and speak to us. That was interesting and it kind of aligns with a possible goal that we may want for this year. I'd love to get your opinion on it. We have been talking, now and then, the subject of coming up with a more abstract version of pipelines, for example. Just like we have our description of CD events, that whole project. It would be nice to be able to do this for pipelines. Anyone on a development team, obviously, we all use our own build servers. We all, are dealing with all of the, whatever language, whether you're using a YAML file or whatever to build your pipelines. It would be nice to have some standard way of doing it so it's not so painful when you want to move from one product to another for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's a big one. So when you say that, are you saying that the the definition of what's the steps are going through the tools are defined as pipeline steps for all CI tools, or is it like different for CI and CD, or like how is that going to overlap for this pipeline is super,
It's huge.
ambiguous. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I think a good start would be CI.
Okay.
That would be a good start. I like breaking it down a little bit like that because that can be pretty huge.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, just for CI, I mean, I know so many people that are, using a particular tool. They've used all the bells and whistles and now they're stuck there.
Right.
They would love to use a feature of another tool or try something else, but it's just too much effort to move because there's too many different things going on.
Right. Right.
And something like Dagger, I don't know, are you familiar with that project? It's something I haven't played with it a whole lot, but my understanding is that it tries to accomplish this for you. You can write, I don't know if they're called plugins, what the term is, but you can write these things that actually communicate with whatever build server, for example, that you're using. And then be able to, have a more abstract way of working with your pipelines.
And it's DAGR, or how does it?
DAGGER.
Okay, like regular Dagger. Okay, I'm expecting some sort of acronym short,
Yeah. And I'll put the link in the chat. It's just dagger.io.
Okay.
And we did have a presentation on this project in the past. And I really like the idea, but my concern with something like this is, often in interoperability, we talk about this idea of glue code and how you need all the, glue code to integrate all of these different products together in order to make them useful for you. And then now you're involved in maintaining this glue code to make sure that it operates for every release and maybe is backward compatible, things like that. And I feel like Dagger might be in that realm.
Oh, okay. That's even better.
Yeah. So, I mean, the worry with Dagger is if, you've built all these things that are intended to be used for a particular build server, and then the build server decides to do something different. Now you've got to fix all your Dagger stuff, right?
Right.
So if we go one step further and have, a definition that everyone strives to use, if we can get support from other projects to say, I am compatible, much like we do with CD events. We could do a similar thing with, pipeline descriptions. I'd love to see that happen.
Yeah, no, it's the other part of the Holy Grail. So yeah,
yes. Yeah. And I know I've spoken about it so general. I know it might sound easier than it really will be, but it's something I think we're ready to start working on. I'm sure we're not the first. So that might be one of our steps, is to find out if there's other groups that have already tried this or attempted this, and why we don't see it, why it's not out there already.
And part of the challenge in the products that we've looked at that do this kind of thing, I mean, whenever we sit down and say, hey, we need a DSL that we can use across everything, is that problem. As soon as you say that, each product wants to, like, this is how this should be, like, because we do this, and it's that deviation and getting them to own those deviations that becomes the challenge, right? And you said it yourself, it's like, as you go, there's slight differences, and those differences need glue code. And even if you have a system that can give you the glue code, it's getting those people to own the fact that, okay, this is glue code for your service, you need to own that. That's the challenge, right?
Exactly. So it'll be interesting. We do have, representation in this group from a lot of different projects that are open source and available. I'm thinking, Jenkins X, thinking a lot of these types of tools. I'm sure that we can get a lot of participation from these groups to get started with something like this. And then, of course, this is also beneficial for, organizations for profit organizations to be able to say, yes, we are also compatible with this, so that the rest of us are free to use what tool we choose.
Yes.
This is all for selfish reasons, I'm telling you.
Exactly.
Just want to
Exactly.
use what I want to use.
All right. Interesting. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so I'm just going to list that down as possibly one of our goals.
Mhm.
What do we call this? It's a
It's a CI/CD DSL, I think, right? Is that what we're looking for, or
a DSL or a
yeah?
Yeah, there might be a better word for that.
I don't want to say language, but you know, that's the only other term. Like, we need a configuration language that describes, or a pipeline. Pipeline is code. It's still, yeah. Whatever name is fine. I'm not.
But review Dagger in here. I'll go collect the links for the Dagger recordings and stuff so that anyone
Okay.
who's not familiar or hasn't seen that, I'll find it, put it in the notes here. Any other goals that we want to work on? I know it's just a few of us here, so I'm sure I'll bring this up at our next meeting as well.
So I have a question about like, so the way that I've seen CD events, or been, talking to the CD events SIG, it seems like CD events is expected to work both as something that uses an event bus and something that works peer-to-peer.
Okay.
Who's building that first event bus kind of service for CD events? Is that something that's been described, or is that like a project that's already within the CDF somewhere, or is it just up to the users or people who are gonna, use CD events to come up with that system? Because it's gonna tie into the DSL long term, of course, if there's a DSL, because so I'm just curious, is that started as a project, or is anyone even thinking about that as a project?
You mean the first like actual implementation?
Yeah.
Of CD events. So I'm not super expert on CD events, but my understanding is they started with cloud events, right?
Right.
That's the initial implementation. As far as anything else that's been developed, I don't know.
Okay, just curious.
And I would assume the CD events project itself would be handling that.
No, they're
not
doing the specification, right? They're building out the
gotcha.
specification for the how interoperability should work.
Right. So now there needs to be a separate one to actually use the specification,
Right.
and
Right.
have the implementation.
Okay.
I am not aware of anything going on there right now.
Okay.
So that's probably, maybe that should be a goal of CD events. But
yeah,
I mean,
so
we should say that too. If we're gonna, and I guess maybe that's the word I was looking for instead of DSL, a specification.
Okay.
If we, start with the specification, and then maybe something like Dagger could be the initial implementation of that. Oh, you went on mute. I lost you.
No, I was just saying, right. You're absolutely right. And specification is a nice way of saying that. So as the interoperability SIG, is interoperability just the statement of, hey, this is things to make things work together, or is it like, here's how to use these things to be interoperable? And I say this because the CDF has a portfolio of things, and as that portfolio of things, even if they start to adopt CD events, the how to interconnect the pieces, like users aren't going to know that, right? There's going to have to be someplace they go within the CDF to say, oh, you're using CD events, this is how you tie these services together. And a little bit of that would come from each service, of course. So is this SIG the SIG that says, hey, this is where we're going to collect all of the interoperability information, or are we just the SIG that says, hey, these are the things that we need to do next to support interoperability?
I think we do a little of both. I
Okay,
know there was a lot of work done in the interoperability SIG already around like getting common language around a lot of these things, having a common vocabulary. Um, we do have, quite a list of, common ideas when we talk about pipelines, like
yep,
what steps are, what jobs are, things like that. But I think the next step now is with all of that in mind, take a stab at an actual specification,
right. Um,
which I would hope, and ideally would hope in the future that it would be something that is credible enough that any other projects out there will look at the spec and say, hey, we need to meet that spec.
right, exactly. Exactly. And then that circles back to like the getting that implementation within the projects within the CDF portfolio to support it and use it like they're looking to do with CD events. But
Right.
I concur. Um, all right. I think
So,
that both of those things should be like listed as part of the goals. Then
okay. Um,
we've got the initial threshold, we got city spec started. And then I guess that wouldn't, I guess if we just get the spec started, we're not going to get all, well, we have to start to kind of get some buy-in to for the
right,
spec. Yeah.
right. So something I will admit right up front here is, I've been an engineer most of my career, so I often start at the implementation level. So
Mhm.
I'm going to struggle a bit with the higher level abstraction. And
Okay.
that's, we're probably going to need to work both ends a little bit here. Um, so I'm
Yeah.
hoping that folks in this group will help keep me out of the nitty gritty details enough so that we can actually get a specification that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, having been, an engineer for a lot of my career, same problem, right? Yeah.
We'll
So
do that. We'll get this done. We can get it done. Bring in the proper folks we need to.
yeah, I think this is I mean, this is a huge goal, right? To say, hey, we're going to do a CI/CD specification for a DSL. The question, I think part of the challenge here is getting all of the challenges from all the people who've attempted this and the reasons why it's not worked, to keep it broad enough to say, okay, you know, these are the minimum, this is the lowest common denominators, or how you fill that gap,
Mhm.
and how you've, and again, this is like part of me is like down in the details of like, okay, this didn't work specifically because, but with enough of that information, then collect it, we get the abstract. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Because we've tried it at Apple, of course, and
Yeah.
there are several different libraries of different people who have trying to take on this task, and then they eventually throw up their hands and run out screaming.
Because there's just too many levers that people need to pull.
And I think that's the thing that I don't have all the answers to, right? That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, okay, but why did you stop? Like if you went down this path, and
Right.
then why does something like Pulumi, how did that
Right.
exist, right? And
Exactly.
so like why were they able to do it, but then over here we can't do it? So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Pulumi, that's a really good example too. But again, with the same concern that if there's no spec everyone's following, then Pulumi is now involved with keeping up with maintaining all of their code to make sure it works with all the cloud providers, right?
Right. Right. And that's the challenge. And then even if, and I know like we're nonprofit, but that's the challenge. And that's why you need, you know, a company behind it and having it as a
Right.
product, because there is so much work to do in that maintenance. And if we make that a part of, if we get a specification, it's vetted and it's happening, and we say to all of the CDF participants, projects, hey, you've got to maintain this portion of this. This is what you're on the hook for, at least in the spec, so that we can make and maintain the SDKs that come out of this, right?
Right.
Because it's only the specification that we're asking them to help maintain. And so
Yeah.
as the versions change with some, and I'm more of a TDD developer. And so it's like, well, I can write tests and have all the tests ready. So as things change, it'll fail. I'm like, okay, there's something else for me to go do. But I also respect that not everybody thinks that way or engineers that way. And so, yeah, it's a mix of whatever.
Right. That's true. And I mean, that's a dedication of your time too, to keep that up,
Exactly.
keep that maintenance up.
Exactly.
Well, it would really be nice to pull in folks like anyone involved with Pulumi or with
Yeah.
Tiger, for example, into this group to have
Yeah.
these discussions with them, because I'm sure they have very firsthand knowledge of what the struggles are with keeping up with all of these other tools.
Yeah, they would be a great speaker for yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That's something, maybe an action item. One of us.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you have any contacts over? I have
I
some.
do.
Okay.
Well, not as direct anymore with Pulumi, but I'm sure I can find someone.
Yeah, and I can too. So I mean,
Okay, cool.
definitely as an action item, we can do that. I think so Fatih is actually coming out to the Bay Area next week.
Okay.
And this is literally my first interoperability meeting, so I apologize. I've been trying to get
No
to this
worries.
meeting for months. So
I've been trying to get the right time for months, so you're fine.
And so this particular, the fact that you want to do a CI/CD specification is huge. And there are a lot of people involved in my org that are trying to do the same thing. So one of the
Awesome.
things that I am going to do, like as soon as we get off this call, is to gather some of those people, ask some questions about their challenges, and then see if we can see who they've talked to add to this list, right? So it might be beyond, because we've gotten several demos from people that do some of those languages, and I can find out who they are and see if we can get them involved in this interoperability process, just to start having the conversation. Because
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that we were going to tackle trying to create this particular spec, but this is huge. I mean, and it does work well with CD events.
It is huge, and I know it's biting off a lot, but I feel like we keep talking
Sure.
about it. We keep wishing we could do something, and I think it's time to just start it. And if we end up realizing this is not, this isn't feasible, that's fine. At least we'll have the documentation, we'll have the information out there for the next person that tries to do this.
Right.
Don't mean to be pessimistic, but I'm trying to be realistic about it, because I do know that I'm coming in thinking, this would be awesome, but I'm also sure that it's been attempted.
But I think it's at a good point to stand on some of the shoulders of people who've already done it. And that's what I'm saying. Let me take some time, try to find some of those people, so that as we're taking this on, we're going in the right direction. I think having taken the step with CD events to kind of break down like the areas and then the possibilities underneath them, we also have some idea of just the language structure and how the abstracts should look as we, move into those same primitives to kind of write some code to create the specification. So I think you're absolutely right. This is a great time to do it. I know a lot of people want to get to that very, very end thing where everything is code, is just maintained and just kind of happens. So I fully support the effort, and I think we could get it done.
Cool.
I just want to rally the right people. That's all.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Super excited about it.
All right.
All right. So sometimes when we come up with ideas like this, I was discussing with Fatih at our last meeting. It was just he and I at our last meeting. whether it was appropriate to spin off a working group for this type of activity, or in our case, I mean, we don't really have anything else going on at the moment. It probably doesn't make sense to spin anything off. We could
Right.
use our time right now, this time, since we already have an hour scheduled for this meeting. We can use it for this purpose, and that would be fine.
Right.
Rather than go through the hassle of a separate working group.
Yeah.
You know, unless, you know, we get a bunch of people involved that are super excited about something else, then we can make that decision then.
Of course. And I think, you know, it's an interoperability SIG, and saying that, you know, having this level of focus, I think, is appropriate for the SIG, right? And
Yes.
even if this becomes, you start a spec and that spins off to be another project like CD events, that's the right way to do it.
Right. Totally makes sense. Cool. All right. The only other thing I had to discuss, we have this white paper that's been sitting out there, aging and molding. And we had this wonderful idea of getting it all cleaned up and out by the end of Q1. That did not happen. And now we're in this situation where we have, you know, so many authors that have moved on. You know, we need to, I don't know if we need to step back and consider just rewriting this thing. Or what to
But
do.
he had asked me to take a look at it, and I had taken a look at it and started down the process of, you know, what would I do, how to fix it is what basically, like, how do we finish it? What I couldn't figure out when I looked at the document is who was it for? Because technically, usually when I see white papers, they're very, very specific about the
Mhm.
target audience. And so as I read through it, I was like, oh, this is actually like, seems to be like 3 or 4 white papers kind of combined around the same subject. And one of the things that I was going to do with Fatih here was to sit him down and go, okay, this is what I've started. Let's see if this works for you, so I could present it back to this group. So I am actually going to be working on finishing some of that this weekend, and then writing that for his visit. So I think this is still a great document, but it's just hard to tell, like, who were we talking to?
Right, exactly. Are you currently making comments on this document, or have you
No, I didn't want to
started
do
something
anything.
completely new?
Yeah, just started it completely new
Okay,
because it
awesome.
was, yeah, because it's just making the comment, who's this for, didn't seem like it was constructive or could help. And I thought maybe if I did examples and say, okay, this is how a thing that's targeted sounds, that we could build off of that maybe and clean some of it up.
Yes. Is it something you can share with us yet, or you're still working
It's
on
pretty,
it?
yeah,
Maybe next time?
yeah, no, definitely next time. Like I said, I was going to
Okay,
share it with Fatih next
awesome.
week to
Okay.
be like, okay, am I even close to what you expected? And it was because I hadn't been able to come to the meeting. That's also why I didn't want to just start commenting on the document and like, who
Right.
is this guy commenting on our document? Like, that's not really my style.
Cool.
Yeah,
Right.
so definitely next time, yeah, definitely have stuff to show. So,
Awesome. Cool. Looking forward to that. I know
okay.
several of us have looked at it and we're just like, we're not getting anywhere with this. So excited to have some new eyes on it. Maybe a new perspective will help.
Awesome.
Well, good. Okay. That's all that I had for this particular meeting. Just getting
Okay.
our goals outlined. I'm going to add some action items here because I did talk about cleaning up the notes and things like that. I think I'm the only
Yes.
one right now that has like sync access and stuff in order to move things around. So that's on me to do
Okay.
that. Make sure that we have everything cleaned up from last year, archived and everything. Okay, I'll get that done next meeting. I'll just explain what I did so
Okay.
future generations can understand what needs to happen every year. Also, one other thing too is, you know, when I look through like the videos and the presentations that we've had in the past, I feel like we don't do enough promotion of those. Sometimes they're super interesting content, but maybe we, maybe have 10 of us on the call at the time or something. I think for folks to spend their time and do that with this group, we should be promoting that a little bit more, whether that's just in our private social media accounts or possibly linking, from our YouTube accounts, our recordings, to those recordings.
So is that to this meeting or to like the conference and things like that?
To conferences, just to have more links available for people to look at. I think we have one document that lists them. It's kind of hidden.
Right.
And then, this is my personal pet peeve, but when a video goes around, I really want to know what it's about. I don't like sitting and watching a video when I don't know the content, or I don't have an outline. I don't have, I want to be able to skip ahead. I want to be able to, find my key points that I'm interested in. I feel like we could spend a little bit more time, and maybe that's not this group in particular, but something I'll bring up to the TOC, that might be something that would be helpful to CDF as a whole, to spend a little bit more time curating our content and improving searching of it and promoting it a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's one in particular I'm looking at, and we had them present to us. It's called JReleaser, a project that I was super interested in, and they just released. They just were working on like a way for their project to integrate with CD events, or to, work with the spec. And that was pretty exciting. So I would like, when they announce that that's ready for folks to use and take a look at, I'd love to take a peek back and maybe promote, the presentation they gave to our group several months ago, so that people can be more familiar with the project as a whole.
I think that's a very appropriate. The CDF needs better marketing overall.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're working on it. I think we're pulling in the right people to do it. So we just need to let them know what's happening in our groups and make sure that communication goes all the way up. All right, good deal. And that'll help too. I'm on the TOC, so I know, I can make that happen for now, but I definitely want to make sure that we always have a sponsor that is a member of the TOC, because, all of our terms are varied. So I won't be part of the TOC forever.
If it's needed, we can get it.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, exciting. I'm glad to see you here.
Glad to be here.
I'll get our next meeting scheduled.
One question.
Yes.
All too advanced for me, but I'm just interested in when you're talking about interoperability, is there like a list of the CDF the foundation members that's part of this interoperability? Like interoperability between what is the beginner question?
So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Melissa.
No worries. No
Okay.
worries. Go ahead if you.
I think so. Interoperability is for CI/CD. It's more of like everything. Like literally every product should be able to be replaced and removed with ease, and you should have this ability to be able to use some of the features from one product or another as these processes change. Now, at Apple, well, as much as I can speak about it, it's like there are a lot of people using open source tools, and I am looking for a way to understand end to end what that process looks like. And you can take metrics or from everything and try to pull it all together. But if the systems have some self-awareness or awareness of their environments that they can speak to each other, then we get some sort of commonality between, how we present that information on the other end of that and how we communicate. So it's literally everything can be involved in it, but it kind of has to describe itself. I think one of the things that was really well done with CD events is it begins to section off the different parts of what CI/CD actually is in a way that each relevant piece can still contain its own self-awareness, but then we have this ability to track it from beginning to end. The only thing that I found missing in the spec was how do we relate things that are happening in parallel? And then, so that's the contribution that we're working on adding to the spec right now to say, hey, this is how these events link together so that you get that full and broad picture of not just when was something committed, but then from that commit, when did it deploy? And being able to have each system then kind of be drop and drag and still be able to collect that information, that's the holy grail. And so I think this is the first real step I've seen in that direction, which is why I immediately kind of started participating with the CDF. Does that help, Victor?
Yeah, definitely help. Yeah, it'd be great if this effort will start with some diagrams. So for beginner, I'm actually not even a CI/CD person, I'm a database guy. I'm just interested in it. So it'd be great to have some diagrams so I can have a clear picture of what's going on, what's involved. Yeah. For example, Jenkins and JFrog and what's the workflow like right now? With this interoperability, how it works better, and all that in a picture, that'll be even better.
I'm going to add that to our goals because I think you're right. I think it's a really good introduction just to get everyone on the same page as far as what we're actually trying to do. I like pictures too, so very helpful. All right, good. All right, that's all that I had.
All right, awesome.
All my comments are spent. If either of you have anything more.
Yep. Good. Thank you for the
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is really, really good to thank you so much.
Yep,
And super
excited
useful.
for the
Like,
rest of this year.
yes. All right.
Okay. Well, good to see you.
Okay.
Looking forward to chatting again next time. And
All right.
I'm really looking forward to that white paper because I'd love to see that just finally happen for us.
Well, I don't, that's why I was like, that's literally why I wanted to show it to Fatih first. Like, dude, is this what you guys are shooting for? And ask some questions. And if it's useful, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That, and I came in so late on that. Like, I don't even know what the original
intent was,
intent
right?
was either.
Yeah,
So that was what I was struggling with too.
This forward. Like, what are you trying to say? So, yeah, no, I get it.
Yep. All right. I'll give you back some time for your day. Good talking to you. And until next time. Bye.